Yeah, so it's if that's what it's kind of, it's very similar to that. Except here, more than like regular crops, you'll see more livestock. You see more pastures and a lot of chicken houses and whatnot.
Okay. Yeah, I was just wondering, just geographically for the lesson we're doing. Okay. Okay, so we've been kind of like on this like kind of like on this adventure of like getting really prepared for Purim, right? And anyways, so so anyway, so we're getting ready for Purim, right? And so we already went through. Uh, okay, all right, all right. Let's go. Okay, so we're in the thing of preparing for Purim, right? And more than just the idea of preparing for Purim is the idea of preparing for a holiday, right? And being able to look at every aspect that's involved in that holiday and either learn it or refresh your memory on it, type of a thing, right? And so we're basically breaking down the structure of Purim, right? So the first thing we started with was the fast of Esther, right, which is on the 13th, right, of Adar, right, and we went through the dynamic, the spirituality, the connection, and all those things connected to it. And then we went into the halacha, the all the things, the things, all the things around the fast, the whole thing. Then we learned about the scroll of Esther, right? The actual Megillah itself, like the dynamic around it, how it's compiled, the readings, how it should go, the halacha, the whole thing, how it came into existence, the whole process, right? Same thing by the fast too, as well, right? We saw the progression of the fast historically in these things. So what we're doing is we're learning the history, we're learning the spirituality, and we're learning the halacha, right? And so that's the approach on every subject, right? So now the next aspect is you sent me a message and you're asking about the Mishloach Machnot, the presents that we give on Purim, right? So that's another aspect. So we got to learn that in the same way, in depth, right? We got to know the history of it, the concept, the build out, because we want to when we're doing it, we want to have all these things in mind. We want to have the historical component in mind. We want to have the halacha in mind. We want to have the sod, the kabbalah, the deep, the esoteric connected to it as well, right? And we want to have that functioning system along with our own personality, right? In a way that we express as well, right? And so you have all these mechanisms that help refine the left side of your brain, the right side of your brain, your emotions and your creativity and all these things, right? So that and also when you think about it, when we think about the system of Rav Ashlag, with form in or substance rather, substance and form of substance, and the idea of abstract form and in essence, right? So when we talk about the holidays, this time on the 13th and the 14th and the 15th of of um, of Adar, right? When we think about that, it's like, well, that light is coming down, right? That light is coming down no matter what. It's coming down for everybody on planet Earth, right? But the people who know about it can capture it, right? So, but if I use just my own rationale, I could never even think about it. I could never even know about it. I could just say, hey, this is how the world is, and this is how I see it, and that's it, right? So when we talk about this idea of form, when we talk about the idea of substance and form of substance, we apply that also to days of the year, right? And so what we're saying is that we could approach the day from abstract form, which is, hey, just another day. The sun's up, the sun's going down, it's windy, it's cold, you know. No, we could do that too. But we want to be able to look at the day in its true form and in its true substance and how that substance expresses itself. This is what we're doing when we learn the holidays. We're removing our understanding of that day and we're applying God's understanding to that day through law, through, say, Hashkafa, outlook, right? And through history connected to our ancestors, right? Because you have to connect it to the ancestors. That's why the history is so important in this whole equation. Some people you meet, they only learn the Kabbalah around. They're like, yeah, and it means this, and the Sferot of Keter, and this, and on this day, it's like this, which is nice. But it's only works when you apply it to the halakha, because you need the halakha to manifest all of it. And then you need to be able to connect it to your ancestors to bring it all the way back to the original source, which is, say, Moshe Rabbeinu on our Mount Sinai, with our ancestors stood there in that original light, or going all the way back to Adam, right? You know, through Jacob, through Isaac, through Abraham, through Shem, all the way, you know, to Enoch, to Adam, Rishon, right? I mean, you could do it that way too, but in with the original light. But the point is saying that we have to learn out the holidays. And the thing is too, you know, I had a rabbi in yeshiva, and he used to always like say, like, you know, if you don't know, oh, actually it wasn't a rabbi, actually it was my roommate's rabbi. He would always say, we have to know everything. Meaning that if we are asked to do something in Judaism, we have to know the source. We have to know where it comes from, why we're doing it, the whole dynamic discussion. Because if not, we could maybe fall into the frame of idol worship, where we're just doing it because everyone else is doing it, and we have no accountability. And hey, my dad did it. That doesn't make it okay. Right? We have to know the source. We have to know why we do it. We have to study that. We have to be totally empowered on this journey, because we're fighting against the dark side, right? Okay, so with that being said, so let's start this process of, hold on, we're not there. Hold on 1 second. Mishloach Manot, right? Mishloach Manot, which is like, so we're going to start. So just to go over again the process, right? We've already did this before, right? We already did this before, but we're going to do it again, right? All right, hold on 1 second. Okay, so we're going to learn. So where's this idea of sending things, sending gifts, this whole concept? Where are we doing it? Where is this coming from? Where's the connection, right? Okay. All right, let's go. They say, like the kids say, let's go. All right. Shem should be with us. Okay, so Book of Esther. So it says, Ve'aki Tov. Okay, Ve'aki Tov. Mordecai ed Hadavarim. Okay, so Mordecai recorded these things, right? And he sent dispatches all to all the Jews throughout the province of Achashverosh near and far, right? Le kayam alehem lehayot osim ad yom arba'a asar. So he says charging them to observe the 14th and the 15th of Adar every year. Ke yamim ashar nachum behem hayikdim. So he said, and on that same day in which the Jews enjoyed the relief of their foes, that they sent to them the same, he says, on the same day on which the Jews enjoyed relief from their foes, in the same month in which had been transformed from them from a time one of grief to a time of festival, they were to observe them as the days of feasting and merrymaking, and as a occasion of sending gifts to one another in the presence to giving gifts to one another, and a presence to the poor. So there it is, the Book of Esther. That's where it is. That's where the whole thing starts, right? Right? It says, kabel hayehudim. So he says, and the Jews accordingly assumed as the obligation of which they have begun to practice, and in which Mordecai prescribed for them, right? Okay, so Mordecai's running everything. All right, so we got it. No. Anyways, so it's like this. Okay, so that's where this idea of that's the idea of where we start with this idea of the presence. The first present, the first sending of gifts was in response to now that the king's decree has changed and there was no decree against the Jews anymore and everybody was safe in all the providences. He had to send that information out to everyone and saying like, hey, we have been saved. This is a time of Yeshua. And now from this point on, the 13th, 14th, the 15th are now going to be holy days by us. And it's going to be a days that now there's a custom. Since Mordecai sent you this good news, we also have to send good news, right? We also going to have the good news. Now the question is, and that's where the sending of that. Now the question is, why that? Why that? And that's why we have to keep digging. We can't be afraid to ask these questions. We got to ask why all the time. Why? And if it doesn't satisfy, we got to keep asking it. Not why because we're in disbelief. Why? Because we know that the Creator loves us and He's the one who put the question in our head to begin with. He's the one who put the desire in our head to begin with. So when we're asking questions, we're not asking questions saying like, hey, you know what? You got to prove to me that this is right. We already know it's right. Okay. The question is, we just want to understand the mechanism so we could be closer to the Creator, and we know that the Creator put the question in our hand to begin with. So we're humbled by that. So, all right. So, I want to go into another sefer, okay, called the Or Hadash, right? Which we'll go into that, but we're going to go a little bit more kind of like in this halakhic explanation of the situation. All right, hold on. So we're just going to go through so far. So one, we always start with the historical context. Where the things that we're doing, where do they connect that in the Torah? Where is it at? Right? Where is it at? How or how did the rabbis interpret it out of the Torah? Right? But we need to figure that out, right? Because I have a problem with something if it doesn't have these connections, right? Now, there's some things that come through common sense, right? There's certain things that are common sense. But in terms of when we do traditions, when we do things, we have to ask, where is the source in the Torah? Where is it at? Where is the source in our book of Nevi'im, right? Where are these things? How did our rabbis understand it, right? So we're going to keep going on down that I don't want to say rabbit hole because that means you're going down, but we're going up. So we're going up on so we're going up like Jacob's ladder, right? That's what we're doing. All right. All right. So it says Mishloach Manot. All right. So he says in sending this is the Or Kadash. This is very holy stuff. It's the secrets. We're going to go into the authors. Okay. So he says sending the portions to one another. He says the commandment is on Purim more than on the holidays. He says, but why is this commandment more on this day than on other holidays, right? He says, okay, so the commandment on Purim is more than on holidays, right? To send a portion to others. You should always send on Shabbat. That's why I was asking you guys to have neighbors, because on Shabbat you said, send a portion to the poor. I know a family that I used to eat by, and they literally a whole family thing. They would go and they knew an old lady and some old people, and the whole family would go on Shabbat and bring her some food and sit with her and that whole thing. And it was like a family thing, like they would do after they ate, right? And so he's saying, so it's always obvious. So why is it more of a thing on Purim? What's happening? God, tell us. We're allowed to ask these questions. We're not just doing it because everyone's doing it. We're not. Okay. He said, indeed, the matter is known from which it is explained above. Purim is for the Jewish people, since they vanquish the seed of Amalek, who are the greatest enemies and adversaries. And that is because the Jewish people is the opposite of the seed of Amalek. Since so long as the seed of Amalek is in this world, God's name is not one. So Rashi says this in Exodus. Where's by he says where's by unifying. He says whereby unifying people. He says whereby you. He says whereby the where's by the Jewish people unify God's name evening and morning. Because of this, we are one nation. He says and are attached to Him, and the Holy One, blessed be He, is one. And because the Jewish people is one nation, it is fitting for them to be as one nation and to have complete connection and affection, complete connection and affection, since they must support the poor from the angle that it is a brother and they are one nation. Right? And he says that is like it is written with the commandment of charity, your brother, in every place. And for since he says, for since they are your brother, you should give to them charity. And that is why the commandment is more specifically on this day. And it is sending portions, or whether it's a gift, whether it is a gift to it be to the poor, that situation, to the poor or to a regular person. Okay, so that's kind of like this is kind of like an outlook on it, right? This is kind of like an outlook on this idea of, is taking us a little bit further. First we saw it inside the text itself, right? Now we're going a little bit further, and he's saying this idea. He's saying, so why is it, the same questions we're asking ourselves? Why is it that we are sinning? Why is it a big deal? We should send charity all the time, right? I mean, that's a big thing. You should do charity before. Should we do charity during? You should do charity during all the time, right? The Pesach, your door is open to everybody, right? These types of things, right? So why now more? He says because the fact that when Amalek exists in the world, that God's name is not unified, right? And during this time as Purim, we wiped out Amalek. Haman was a descendant of Amalek. So we wiped them out. And so because of that, there was a perfection with God's name, which allowed us to change our because of the Amalek, because the Amalek was destroyed, God's name was unified. And so therefore, when we're sending presents, we're connecting to this unification, right? But we have to go deeper, because now we can say, what is this unification? You can't just leave us like this. What are you doing, right? What do you mean? Now we're going deeper. Okay, so we just got to keep going. Hashem got us. He's going to take us. He's going to take us where we need to go. And these are the levels. This is Purim. We're in it. Like, it's every part of it. We have an intimate relationship with every single part, right? So sometimes we have to go deeper. So we got to go to Lukutei Halacha. That Rabbi Nachman stuff, and we gotta we're going into the halacha. This is not before we're doing was Lukutei Etzot, and we always do that because they cover different topics. Actually, going into Lukutei Halakot, so we're learning about the spiritual component around this component of giving the presents. Okay, so let's go back in. So we have levels to the game, right? So he says veze bekinat umishalach Matanot ish lere'ehu Manot deyacha mikianat man. Okay, so he's comparing. Okay, so you see right here. So he says this is the aspect of and sending the portion Manot. He says to another. Okay, so he says this aspect. So now he's going to take the whole thing of what we're doing now. So now we have a structure of why it's so important. We understand where it originates from. So now we're about to go to a whole nother level with it. Okay, so so he says like this. He says this is the aspect of the sending of the portion, because this is what he's talking about. The manot, right? She says to another. She says specifically manot, which is an aspect of mana, right? Mana. So he's saying this aspect of the manot is connected to this concept of mana, right? What is the mana? For the mana came down from the heavens, right? And since they grind mana there, right? He said they come from the heavens. He says shachalim, where they grind shachanot, whatever it's saying, they do mana there. So anyway, this mana comes from this place in the heavens, right? And so he says, and the heavens is the abode of the angels. And it is the aspect of the strengthening of the angel and the aspect of laughter, shok, and joy. He says, as explained in the essay found above. He says, and therefore manna that descends from there was a holy food. He said there was no grip at all on it from the other side. So he said the manna that came down from the heavens was a completely pure food where none of the klipa, none of the citra akra, none of the shells, none of the negativity was able to come from. It came from the place of pure heavens, right? From the heavens, he says, in the heavens, which is strengthening of the angels, right? So he said there was no grip on it from the other side. He said, since it descended from the heavens, right, which is the strengthening of the angels, as mentioned above. And he says that is why the manna was as if it was placed in a box to indicate that there was no grip on the other side. So he's saying, so when the manna came down, it came down like in this kind of like just this I guess like a box. It came down. He said because there was nothing on the other side. He says, like just like something that is placed in a box has no grip from something from the outside the box. He said, for the manna had no chaff or straw, since the other side had no grip on it. He says, this is the aspect of the portion on Purim to indicate that it reflects the food is from now on Purim. Hence, the flow from one to his fellow is perfected now with a great flow. And now we have no fear at all from the other side, since there's no grip on the other side on the food now. He says, and now, so he's saying the same aspect of how, so he said the same aspect. He said, so, normally, say you do something nice, say you give to someone else, you provide, say maybe there's an aspect of ego, or maybe there's an aspect of negativity. But the light of Purim is so great, is so immense, that it's at the same level of the giving that you do on man is exactly the same way of the giving that Hashem gave us with the man from the heavens. You're operating in that aspect of divine heavenly connection, right? With this aspect of man, right? And so you're in this place of divine heavenly connection where you are now sharing and you're now giving, and the giving that you're giving is completely pure. And through this completely pure giving, you're able to transfer the light that's coming down, right? The light that we created a vessel for and received on the fast of Esther. That light that we receive on the fast of Esther, now we can share that light of the light of Mordecai and Esther. That's that energy, that essence of them that came down that we received through Hashem, and we're able to share that with our fellow brother, and they can share it with us. Okay. And that element is the most important, right? Because this creates a spiritual bond amongst Klal Israel. We can all bond to each other on this aspect of giving with love, right? Okay. So he says now the strengthening for now is strengthening of the angels through the joy of Purim, as mentioned above. He says that's why it's called sending manot, the aspect of man that descends from the heavens, where there is laughter and joy, is the strengthening of the angels, as mentioned in point. So he says, so that aspect of the heavens where the man comes from is a place called the laughing and joy, right? It's a place of simcha. He says, in the same way, on Purim, on that day when we're eating and drinking and all these things, he says we're laughing and we have joy, right? He says, which is strengthening of the angels, as mentioned above. He says, in that which have the customs to cover. He says, okay, so he says, in that which have the customs to cover it with the cloth, to when they're sending a portion is a hint to the manna, which as if it was placed in a box. So he's saying there's some people who have a custom that, they go all the way, they're so into the man concept that when they give the gift, whatever it is, whatever that gift is, they give that gift, they wrap it in a white cloth, right? Because they're in a frame that they're actually giving this aspect of man, right? It's something divine. It's not just, oh, I'm giving a gift, right? No, it's like the gift is reflective of the spiritual elevation that exists on this day, where the giving is at the same level of the giving that God gave us in the desert through the man. So we're operating in that same level, right, as the man, right? And so he's saying, so therefore, there's people have a custom to cover it with cloths when we are sending a portion is a hint of the manna which is placed in a box, right? As it's written in the Shulchan Aruch, right? Which we're going to be learning. He says that it because of this that we cover our bread on Shabbat with the cloth, right? Because the cloth is like a man, right? The man, the challah for Shabbos is like the man, right? So we cover it, right? Because the way the Midrashim teach us is that when the man came down, there was a level of dew that came down first, and then the man came down, and then on top of the man there was another level of dew, and that would preserve it until the Jews came out, to come out to take the man, right? And sometimes the man, for some people, the Midrashim say it just came directly into their house. They just had to extend their hand out of it, right? So he said because of that, they covered the bread of Shabbat with the cloth in memory of man. He says, as the sending of the portion is also an aspect of manna, which was as if it was placed in a box for the other side to have no grip over the food, of Purim. Is strengthening of the angels is mentioned above. Okay, so we're going to keep going, but I want to just talk about it a little bit. So anyway, any thoughts, reflections up until this point? Because we went over a few levels.
Yeah, when you got to the point about Amalek, and just that the connection, like reconnecting to the unification, can we look at it in, because what I got out of it was just, here's a situation whereas Shaul was given a commandment to basically destroy Amalek from the face of the earth, right? And because he didn't do it, it's like Hashem's word and his command must be fulfilled. Like we can't have unfinished business, you know? And so one way or the other, he's gonna bring it back around to us and set up situations for us to correct what was originally done that Shaul failed to do. You see what I'm saying? And so when Amalek is destroyed and Haman is killed, and not only was Haman killed, but his sons were also killed.
Yep.
And so through that experience, even those that wanted to raise the sword to our ancestors were also destroyed. So in regards to that, can we look at that as a completed work? And since now the work is completed, now we can move forward with Hashem. Now we can truly express manifest his name in the earth. Is that a way to look at that?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. The idea is saying that exactly what you said, right? It's in a frame of God made it in a way that He gave a certain commandment and it wasn't fulfilled, and came to bite us in the back later. And at that time, they were able to fulfill that commandment. And by doing that, that was the basis of this unification that allowed that stream of light to come in from the heavens into this world unaffected, right? And so, um, and so, I'm just looking at this thing. All right. So we bring our boy Rambam back. All right. So anyways, so the point is saying that that unification existed, right? And so that unification that existed created this like kind of like pure light that comes down, and that pure light that comes down, is something that we're able to receive at that time because of that, This is the light of Purim. He's giving, in a coded way, he's giving us an insight of the quality of the light of Purim by telling you what happened during that time, right? So by explaining what happened, God uses scenarios to explain the light, right? So we understand the light of Pesach is the light of freedom, of Exodus, of a new order, right? We understand that because the Exodus happened at that time. We would still could know it as a powerful light and even great things that happened throughout history. But the culmination of that understanding happens on Pesach and like say the Shavuot, right? The time of Shavuot, that's the time when the Torah was revealed, right? And all the holidays and all the New Year's and all these things, right? So the point is just saying that on the explanation that he's giving us on what happened, the breakdown that you gave is explaining the texture of that light. It's like I don't know if you've been to wine tasting, these types of things, or you go to a place where they have different perfumes or clones. You sample, right? And there's different qualities, and then you choose. Okay, this is the one I want, right? So there's different qualities of light that come throughout the year, right? And what do they do for us exactly? Oh, I don't know. Okay, so how do we find out? By the situation that allows us to understand the light, right? That gives us the insight. Okay, so just keep going. So it says kasad kovat aseda, right? So I don't want to go. So I wanted to make the Suda thing a little bit separate, but it connects very much with the what's going on, right? Okay, so what's going on in the Suda, right? So he says like this. It says, "What is the
Oh,
nature?"
yeah,
Yeah.
Rabbi,
Mm.
we can't see the screen.
Okay. Sorry about that. Thank you. Thank you. All righty. Mm. Okay, sorry. So we're in it. So all right. So we're back in it. So we're in the Mishnah Torah. You know, the great Rambam. He could join us for the study of his Sefer. So we're gonna get a kind of an insight. So I wanted to do it a little bit different. I wanted to do the meal separate, but we could still do the. I don't know. Maybe we will. Maybe it just depends if I could find some. Anyway, so we're gonna learn about the meal because the meal and the gifts are kind of like intertwined, right? Okay, so he says like this. So he says, "What is our obligation for the feast? Right? What is the Purim feast? What is the whole thing of the Purim feast?" He says a person should eat meat and prepare as attractive a feast as his means permit. He should drink until he's able to become intoxicated and fall asleep in a stupor. Okay, and we go into that because don't take it literally. I mean, it's like some people do that, but you don't have to do that. You could just take a nap, right? Because I don't want someone to like hear this and be like, "Hey, man, Rabbi said you're supposed to get in a stupor, man." And the next thing you know, hey, man, I got so drunk the police came and got me because of your Torah, man. Come and bail me out. I'd be like, come on, man, don't do that to me. I'm in Israel. So with that being said, everybody knows their level. You know what I mean? Like I'm not person. I don't drink. I'm not such a drinky type person. You know what I mean? Like, hard alcohol is not like a thing for me. On Shabbat, I will have wine. You know what I mean? I have wine on Shabbat. And even maybe like a l'chaim. Some people pass around shots on Shabbat at the shul. Maybe, but in general, it's like I'm not like a heavy drinker person. And for me on Purim, I drink wine, I sip, I chill. You know what I mean? I sip, I chill. All the stupor stuff, all that. I'm not into that because there's such a tremendous light that is revealed on Purim that sometimes people go too far with the drinking part of it and miss out on all the learning that could be accomplished, all the Devar Torah that could be said, right? And they're like laid out puking on the side, right? So let's understand that. So all right. So he says similarly, a person is obligated to send 2 portions of meat, 2 other cooked dishes, or 2 other foods to a friend, implied in Esther 22, sending portions of food to one another, right? 2 portions to a friend. He said, whoever sends portions to many friends is praiseworthy. If he does not have the means to send the food to a friend, one must exchange one's meal with him, each one sending each other what they had prepared for the Purim feast, and is in a way fulfilling the mitzvah of sending a present of food to one's friend. Okay? So he said that's an interesting concept. So he says 2 people like, hey man, we don't have a lot of money, but what we're going to do is we're going to make a dish for poor. My wife's going to make, barbecue lamb. Your wife makes barbecue lamb, right? And then I'll send you my barbecue lamb, and you send me and you send me your barbecue lamb, and then it says we exchange gifts, right? It's a nice one. I like that. So he says, "Ve'chayav lechalech le'amiyam bayom." Okay, so he says one is obligated to distribute charity to the poor on the day of Purim. He says, at the very least, give two poor. He says, at the very least, give each to two poor people one present, and it be money, a cooked dish, or another food, as implied to Esther, give a gift to the poor. Send two gifts to the two poor. He says two gifts to two poor people. One should not be discriminating and selecting in the recipient of these gifts. Instead, he should give to whomever outstretches his hand. Money given to distribution on Purim should not be used for any other charitable purpose. Right. So whatever you put aside that you want to give on Purim is just money just for Purim. It has its own status. It says tuva. It says mutav adam le arbot be matnot. Okay, so he says it is preferable for a person to be more liberal with his donation to the poor than to be lavish in his preparation of his Purim feast, or in sending portions of his friends, for there is no greater and more splendid happiness than to gladden the heart of the poor and the orphan and widow and the convert. And he says, and so he says, and one who brings happiness to the heart of these for these unfortunate individuals resemble the divine presence which Isaiah described of having the tendency to relieve the spirit of the lowly and relieve those with broken hearts. Right? So anyway, so the thing is like this. So he's saying a couple things. So we bring two types of gifts, right? So he says one obligation. He says one is obligated to distribute charity to the poor on the day of Purim, right? He says at the very least to give each to two people who are poor one present, be it money, a cooked dish, or another food as implied. Okay, so that aspect of giving is this dynamic of giving to the poor, right? And so that part we want to understand that a little bit more. Any questions on that before we move on? Okay, cool. All right, go ahead.
More Shezman.
Okay, so uh, in times past, we haven't really understood maybe the full dynamics of the Mishloach note like this, which is really great. We have just, made bags and as a family and just brought it to like a shelter or somewhere where people were in need, right? But in understanding now that we have we're not in a community, but just other people who believe like we believe and just want to give gifts to them. The part about the money, if you give the money to someone, is it saying that when you give it to them, you say, this is for Purim, and that the person receiving it has to say that they are to use it for Purim? I was just trying to understand the whole concept of the money.
Yeah. So just to answer just that point, and so far we haven't read anything about the person having to be Jewish, right? The only dynamic was a poor person, right, in the community, right? And on top of it, we should try to do it in a way that doesn't bring them like any shame or embarrassment, right? Like, hey, you need this money, don't you? You know what I mean? Like, we don't want to be like that, right? So So that part. So yeah. So the idea so far that they said, oh well, you have to give to someone else. Now there is a dynamic where you do also give to to other people as well, right? So the kids should give to each other, right? You guys should give to the kids and the kids should give to you. So everyone should be exchanging gifts on that day. Everyone should be doing that. So you are doing that exchange amongst each other. You got 10, it's a lot of you guys. You know what I mean? It's a lot of sharing, right? It's a lot of sharing. And from that aspect, yes, then you identify that is by Purim, right? And you're fulfilling the mitzvah of Mishloach Manot, right? And we're going to keep going, right? And we're going to keep going on this dynamic. But any other questions on this?
What? Say it again.
Is there any other questions?
Supposed to announce any monetary gift that did he?
You can't. I just want to. So, are we to announce any monetary gifts at all? So we don't even have to bring up.
We don't have to
even bring up Purim when we're giving.
No. I mean, no. It's not. I mean, it's not like. It's if you're giving it to a fellow Jew, yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
Like if you're giving to a fellow Jew, yeah. But if you're just giving to a person who's in need, right? Who's in your community, I mean, if they're not Jewish, it wouldn't be such a thing. I mean, if you wanted to, I mean, if you want to gangbang it, you know what I mean? Like you could do that. Yeah.
About a Jew.
Yeah, he's not Jew. I mean, it's like there's no such a connection, but you could let them know that you are a Jew. You know what I mean? And the part of your holiday is to anybody who's in need is to share. I mean, if you get into that type of
conversation, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm not. When I give charity, I'm not really trying to have conversation. I'm trying to get out of it. You know what I mean?
Well, okay, so let me just say this here real quick. So one of the things that can be kind of I guess not really kind of complicated in that is like with our neighbors. Like all of our neighbors know, our whole community know that we're Jews. All right, and they respect that. But what happens is that like when we bring things to them and we give gifts to them, they turn around on their holidays and they want to bring gifts to us. You see what I'm saying? And there's times that we've had to say, well, hey, thank you, but we can't eat that. We can't receive it.
Yeah.
So and sometimes they're like, hey, oh, well, this is steak, or this is a roast, this is beef, this is lamb, and this, and it's like we still can't. I can't accept it. And so that I think that's the biggest caution that we have concerning that.
Yeah, no, I mean, totally. I mean, geez, I mean, you got people bringing non-kosher food. You don't want to deal with that, but so I totally hear that. So yeah, I mean, it's the key thing is it's like even if even if you I don't know, like I mean, who finding someone in need. You know what I mean? That's the key thing. You know what I mean? That's like hold on one second. Hold on. Okay, so I was gonna bring this good mom. I didn't do it. Okay, so wait, I just want to bring one more thing. Okay, so yeah, so the idea is like this because we're learning it, and let's focus a little bit on the Okay, hold on. Let's focus on this. Hold on. Okay, here we go. Okay, so I want to bring the Megillah, the Gemara, and we're going to see how the rabbis in Babylon talked about, some. This is a very small part we're just going into. The point is, we're going through sources, we're getting this broad understanding, and we got to connect it to all the other situations we've been in. Okay, so here's the Megillah, Gemara Megillah, Talmud Babli. So it's like this. So he says, okay, so it says, Matanot le'avonim, right? So this is this is what we're talking about, the le'avonim, right? The people who are poor, right? Aveyonim, right? Aveyonim, right? So these are people. So it's the gifts for the poor. So Rav Yosef taught, right? Hine Rav Yossi, I Mishalach Manot, Ish Le'ehut. So he says, the gift of the poor, Rav Yosef taught at Esther, sending gift, he says, sending portions to each of his neighbors. This means 2 portions for one man. A gift for the poor. Okay, so he says sending gifts of portions to their neighbor. So that would be the kids giving to each other, right? And then he says, and then 2 portions for each one. So they should all give like one gift, right? Hold on one second. All right, now we do. All right. So he's saying like this, and we're going to go more into the halakha, but this is what he's saying here, right? He's saying this in here. So he says sending portions to each of the neighbors, meaning 2 portions for each man, and the gifts. And he says, and the gifts for the poor, right? 2 gifts for 2 people, right? So those are the things. He says, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, Shedar, Le Rabbi Osia. So he says, Rabbi Yehuda sent to Rabbi Yossi a flank of a calf that was born third and a bottle of wine. And he says, Rav Oshi sent to him so he says, you have fulfilled with us, our rabbis, the commandments by sending portions to each of his neighbors for the gift of the poor. So they're just going through different rabbis Sadar. So he says Rabbanan sent to Rabbi Ben Mari bin Mar through Alba a basket filled with dates and a cup of flour and a cup of grain. Rabbi Abba said, he said, if a pleasant becomes you a king, he does not sit down at the bowl from his neck. All right, so I don't want to have to start breaking this down, right? That's the thing, because we're going to go much longer, and I want to kind of keep it around this dynamic. So things like this, we're going to keep going, but just it was like a little bit cryptic that Glas Gemara was a little bit cryptic. Okay, so but the point is saying that what they're talking about was Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, who was a very wealthy person. That's what they're not saying. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi was very wealthy. The other rabbi was not, right? So he didn't necessarily have the ability to send back. So he gave him a blessing type of, you know what I'm saying? That type of a thing. So it's a story. But the point is like this. So that's that. I want to end it with one more outlook, which is the actual halacha. That's why Shai probably did that first. But I want to just touch on the idea of the poor. Just understand there's different set of gifts that we give to our brothers, and there's another gift that we give specifically to the poor. When we say brothers, I mean like our neighbors, right? All right, hold on. Okay, so here's our Shulchan Aruch, okay, and then so this would be more concise about the halacha in this area. All right, let's go. All right. Oh. He says, Chayavim le'echol velishma. He says, velish toto, velishma nog, but he says, sorry, velish democha ba'afarim. So he says like this. there's an obligation on Purim, right? And he says there's an obligation to eat on Purim, to drink, and to rejoice on Purim. He says also on the night of the 14th, you should rejoice and have a more elaborate meal than usual. If Purim occurs on Shabbat night, although you must have a third meal on Shabbat, you should eat a little bit during the day to have some appetite for the night. So, like, say if Purim was like, say, Saturday night, right? He says, take it easy towards that Shabbos day, so you have some space at night for for the meal at night, right? He says, okay. He says if Purim occurs on Shabbat night, although you must have a third meal on Shabbat, you should not eat. You should eat a little during the day to leave room for the appetite for the meal of Purim at night. Nevertheless, by having a meal at night, you have not fulfilled the mitzvah of Sudat Purim in the feast. He says, okay, so it's a mitzvah. It's one of the commandments. How do we fulfill Purim, right? Now that we're getting a structure, how everything comes together. So one of the mitzvahs, to fulfill the mitzvah, we have a series of mitzvahs, right? One is the fast, right? That's the 13th. That's one command we have to do. And that fast, as we learn, allows us to bring down the light of Purim, or it allows us to cleanse ourselves out, and it allows us to bring that light. Also, the fast serves as a protection for the overindulgence that could happen on Purim for a lot of people, right? So that's one element. Second element is hearing the reading of the Megillah Esther, the scrolls of Esther, right? So we have to hear the scrolls of Esther. In the scrolls of Esther, right? The scrolls of Esther are basically, the story of what happened, right? So we have to hear that at night, and we have to hear that at day, right? Right, that's the thing. So, right? So it has to be read at night and at day. So he says Purim occurs on Shabbat night, although we must have a third meal. He says, nevertheless, by having a meal at night, you have not fulfilled the mitzvah. He says, nevertheless, having a meal at night, you have not fulfilled the mitzvah. So the mitzvah of the meal is the next mitzvah, right? You have to have a full meal on Suda, because what does the meal represent? And that's why we're going to spend more time on the meal, okay? We're not going to do that today, because today was about the gifts that we give. And again, the gifts that we give are the gifts that Hashem gives us, right? And so the gifts that he's giving, which is like interesting, because we could say in Parsha Truma, when Hashem tells the Israelites to bring the gifts, he said that's an insight also to Purim, right? It's an allusion to Purim. So anyways, just thought about it. But the point is like this. So the gifts that he just keeps giving, right? We're learning it, and we're learning that it's in order to fulfill the mitzvah of the Suda, which is another one of the mitzvahs, right? It's not just at night. You have to do it. He says for the mitzvah, you have to, for the mitzvah, if to have the main Purim feast during the daytime, for it is written days of feasting. You should light candles as you do on joyous occasions and Yom Tov, even when the meal is held in the daytime. Also, on the night of the 15th, you should celebrate a little, giving gifts to the poor and sending Mishloach Manot to friends. Must be done during the daytime. So it has to be done during the daytime. Since some people are busy preparing the delivering of Mishloach Manot, part of the Purim Suda may extend into the night. You should pray for the mincha. You should pray mincha while it is still the middle of the day, and you should have your Suda after mincha. At any rate, you should still have a greater part of the Suda while it is still day. When Purim occurs on Erev Shabbos, you should have the Suda in the morning. Okay? So if Purim comes on Shabbat, if the Purim occurs on the Erev Shabbos, you should have a Suda. You should do your Suda early in the morning, because you have Shabbat meal coming later. Out of respect of Shabbat, he said it is commendable to devote some time to Torah study before beginning the Suda. So you should learn some Torah before you eat the meal on Purim. This is on the basis of the Jews had the light. It says in on chapter 8, verse 16, on our rabbis. He said the expound light means, the rabbi says expound on the word light means Torah. Some authorities say that you should eat different kinds of seeds on Purim to commemorate the seeds Daniel and his friends ate in Babylon, and also remember the seeds of Esther ate. For the Talmud says that it's written he favored her and her maids with preferable treatments. This means he gave her seeds for her foods. The laws of Hashmanina Brakot Hamazon. Al Nasim. Sorry, it's English stuff, man. Get it out of here. Okay, anyways, okay, so we'll stop here, right? We did some work. We covered some ground. We're going to learn more about the halakha. We're going to go deeper into this. We're going to go deeper into the halakha, making sure we're clear on all the different points. So you guys are experts going into it. You guys could teach people about preparing for Purim. You know the sources, the whole dynamic, and you could apply your own style to the whole thing. Any thoughts, ideas, reflections?
Yeah, what we were looking at was we were planning on because the way that Purim the 14th is falling will be on the eve of Shabbat, so we're going to do a meal in the morning to respect the Shabbat meal in the evening. My question is, I know if it's on the 15th, when will you be doing it? When will you be doing the meal? That's the question, just in case we have to.
Well, you guys are going to be doing it on the 14th because you guys aren't behind a walled city, right? Right. If you're here in Jerusalem, well, God willing, you will be, right? Yes. That you'll on the 15th, you'll be doing it because we're behind the walls we're behind the walled city of Jerusalem. So you guys will be doing on the 14th, which I think is it Thursday? Is Thursday night?
Well, it starts Thursday night.
Yeah.
And then Friday. So the day of Purim will be on that Friday. Yeah. That's what we're doing. That's why, because when we read it, we're like, okay, we can't have the meal that night, Thursday night. So we'll have it in the daytime. And so, but because it's the eve of Shabbat, we'll do it in the morning. Yeah. And that way we're respecting the Shabbat meal.
Exactly.
So like on the 15th though, like what will you do, like a morning or the meal in the middle of the day on the Shabbat? Like how do you all do that on the 15th if it falls on the Shabbat? Because it's gonna be during Shabbat.
Yeah. So on that part, that we're doing it. I mean, it's Friday night. You know what I mean? Like, it just happens to be that Friday night is Sushan Purim. I mean, I'm going to. Like we're gonna be going to like a friend's is doing this whole thing, so I don't know what it's gonna look like. You know what I mean? Like, it's gonna be wild because it's gonna be packed. it's like it's like you understand, people go so crazy out here over holidays. Like, it's like Purim is gonna be it's like insane. It's like the whole town, like tens of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people. You could imagine, like millions of people literally are gonna be celebrating Purim, and it's just like very messianic. You know, like, it's just like, whoa, like this is what it's going to look like. So anyways, but there's some very interesting things about the Suda we still got to learn about, in terms of just building more thoughts. Like, why are we having a Suda? Like, where does that come from? Where's this idea of the Suda? What does it mean? Why do we have to do it? What's the connection? So we have that. I think we covered Mishloach Manot pretty good. I think we're in the game on that. I think we're pretty good on the Esther. Everything should be reviewed. I think we're good on the fast. And so, we're going to go more into the halakha, just be more clear on it, and then we'll do that. But then tomorrow, we're going to probably focus a little bit back on Rav Ashlag with the Zohar, that whole thing. Because we still got a little bit of time before Purim, but I just want to get this out so it gives people time to review, and do that. So it's not like some people review like 2 days before and they're like crash coursing it, and no, you got to live with it. You got to prepare your vessel. You have to think about it. Any last thoughts? Excuse me.
No, Toda. Toda.
All right, so tomorrow, B'vat Hashem, same time. Baruch atah